Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson and welcome to Microsoft Project Made Easy. Today we're going to be looking at updating a schedule. In previous Made Easy tutorials, we've looked at how do you set up a schedule, we've looked at how you add resources and costs to a schedule, and if you're missing some of that foundational information in the show notes, you can always just click on one of those and go back and check out how I got to where I am. But today, as I mentioned, we'll be looking at the updating process. We have this bathroom renovation project. I've got a work breakdown structure here, bathroom, pre-construction, construction, areas of work. We've actually gone in and I right click over here to switch screens to go to the resource sheet. We've created a simple resource sheet. We put some costs based on hourly rates. We've applied some costs based on some subcontracts, anybody that you would contract the work with. We even put a material to measure by either square foot or square meter or by volumes like cubic yard or cubic meter. So we even added that there, and we've applied these costs in our actual Gantt chart. So switching screens, we've talked about this in previous Made Easy videos. Click the square icon box, right click to easily switch between the various screens. We're currently in the default screen, which is your entry screen. We're going to go to the cost screen. We can see that this is a nice big fancy master bathroom, $46,000 that we've applied to it. We've got those costs applied through the resources that we've added to the various activity. We've added a project manager to 10% of the whole project. We've added a site super or lead carpenter 50% to the whole project. In some points they've had some help. We've got some subcontractors and costs that we've applied throughout the project as well. So we're now at the stage where we want to update the project. So the first thing you have to know is you need to set the baseline. If you've structured a project like this, this is your plan, you're putting it together, you've added all your costs, this is what you want, you're ready to go. So then you need to set the baseline. Setting the baseline is, in essence, saving the baseline. It is saying this is the plan, and then we're going to measure how we're doing against the plan as we go forward. We're going to see, are we ahead of schedule? Are we behind schedule? Are we over budget or are we under budget? But we have to set that baseline. Before I do that, I'm just going to shrink down my time scale here a little. I'm just going to double click on the time scale, and that brings up the timescale dialog box. I usually like to shrink it down. You can do all kinds of customizations in this timescale box that I've mentioned in one of the earlier videos, but I find bring it down to around 50, maybe 55, 60%. You can usually still see what's going on by dates usually here. So we've kind of shrunk it down that we can see a number of weeks put into the schedule here. And I'm going to go to project. I'm going to go set baseline here. All right. So I went project tab, set baseline, and I can see it just says baseline here. There's nothing that says last saved or anything here. I would then go with the default because I want to set the baseline for the entire project. I don't want to set it for part of it. I want to set it for all of it. I would click OK, and that would set the baseline for the whole project. But just to be clear on what's going on, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go into my variance screen. Because right now with the updating, we look at the entry screen, we're going to look at the tracking screen, and we're going to look at the variance screen. So right now, if I go to the variance screen, you see how it says not applicable? So I haven't saved it as a baseline yet. So I'm going to go set baseline under the project tab. Remember that. Set baseline. It says not applicable. Now I'm going to go set baseline for the entire project. What it's going to do is it's going to copy all of these dates and paste them there. It's going to copy all of these and paste them there. And so that when we change things, this won't change, but this will, and it'll tell us what our variance is. What's the difference in what we planned. So I'm going to click OK. And so you see that got copied and pasted there. That got copied and pasted there, more or less. And so now we're good. We've set the baseline. And by the way, I'm just going to set this. I'm not too thrilled with the way this is set up right now at the moment. So I'm going to go into this time scale. And right now it's got the different tiers layered out. And it's got label. I'm going to get that to show Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I'd rather see that than all these days. So I'm just going to say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And there we go. I like that a lot better. You can always customize the time scale if you're not happy with how it's showing things, right? How I just did it. Okay, so I can see days, I can see weeks. I've got my baseline set. Now what I need to do is say, well, whereabouts are we on this project? So how much of this project has occurred and whereabouts are we? So I'm going to say that we kind of got through the pre-construction part. We've actually started work on the project. So maybe we're going to come in maybe somewhere in here, and we're going to put in a status date. A status date is the date we are updating the schedule to. So it's the date that we're updating the schedule to. Maybe I'll actually make it to this Friday over here. So we've started maybe a week and a half, but we had all this preliminary stuff where we're waiting for the permits. So to put a status date in, if we're under that project tab, and if you remember from earlier Made Easier videos, each one of these tabs is for an area of work. Well, you know what? Updating the project, that's the whole project. So we have to put in not only a baseline, but we also have to put a status date. And that status date is the date we're updating the project to. So I'm going to look at this, and what did I say? We're going to go maybe to the end of this week in March. So that's March 12th, I believe. So we're going to put March 12th there, and I'm going to click OK. Nothing happens. But you know what? I would like to see when that status date is on my Gantt chart. So if you click in this blank area and you right click with your mouse, you'll see grid lines. The other way you can do this is you go to Format. So what I want to do is I want to insert the status date line where I've set it to. As you recall, I just was in project. I went to the status date. I selected the status date. It's there. If I didn't do this, this will not work. Right click, that brings up the grid lines box. And you can also go to Format and select grid lines. It'll do the same thing. I usually just, because it's quicker, scan over the blank area, right click, click grid lines, brings up this grid line box. You'll see very quickly there's all kinds of custom lines and custom ways that you can make your sheet and the Gantt chart look. You have to pull down, so you have to remember, pull this down, click on status date, click solid line, click red. You can click whatever color you want or whatever type of line you want. Watch what happens when I click OK. See the line appears over here. Now I can see where my status date is. This other line you're seeing here, well, that's actually today's date. But this is the status date line. For me to do a proper update, it has to be at least this Friday of this date that we put in for our status date. So Friday, March the 12th, it has to have at least happened. The program will let you, update into the future, but you can't update realistically until it's happened on your project. So this should either be March 12th at the end of the day, or March 13th, or even, a few days afterwards. It should not be before that I update a schedule. Always remember that if you want to have any kind of trueness or accuracy. All right, so that means I'm going to update these activities for what happened. I don't update it in the variance screen. Remember, we went into the variance screen. You, up to this point, are probably very comfortable in the entry screen. So I don't update in the entry screen because that's for entering information. One of the best places to update, because you can do things multiple ways in Microsoft Project, but is to go into the tracking screen. So you right click on the square icon box. That's how I switch between screens. And you go to the tracking screen. And in the tracking screen, you see actual start, actual finishes. Very important. Understand the difference of what the columns are saying to you. There are a lot of different types of start columns, like baseline start, late start, baseline finish, late finish. There's start, there's finish. But then there's actual start, actual finish. That means you're actually swinging a hammer. You're actually nailing 2x4s. You've actually done something, if it's, along those lines, whatever your project type may be. Actual is doing or done, started or finished. Okay, so we've got those actual starts and actual finishes. Now, we could, if we scroll along here and we see this here, we can start to update this. Now in this screen, I usually like to insert the duration column. You can customize your screen as I've talked about in previous videos. So you can right click and go insert column as long as you know the name of the column you want to insert. So in this case, I would like to insert the duration column. So I type D for duration. It brings up all the columns with duration, with that start with a D, and then I'm going to click duration. So I can see that there. All right. And then I can start to put in stuff that went the way that I felt that it went. So I can put in that we started on time. If I just click here and I say that we are 100% complete, it's going to say that it started on February 3rd and finished on February 3rd because that's when we had it scheduled for. So it's just going to put that in. On the other hand, if submit and wait for permit, right? Submit and wait for permits. Let's say that took 22 days long. We submitted it on time, but it took 2 days longer than we thought. So if I change this duration to 22 days and I say that it's 100% done, 100%, 100, enter, it puts a dark line through it and it shows it as being done, 100% done. It was red before, so it's no longer critical because it's done. Once it's done, it's got no flexibility, no movement. The whole critical path idea is that when something's critical, if it takes longer to move, well, it's done, it's not going to move. Important to know too, if you're updating a schedule, if I update something ahead of other activities and then I make them take longer, it won't push the activity that I said is done. It'll push everything else, but that one will be locked in place and things will go past it. Probably not what you want. So you kind of go by earliest date to latest date when you're doing the update. You don't go from latest date to earliest date. You go from earliest to later. During the update period, which is taking place from February 3rd to our status date of March 12th. All right, that's great. Maybe procurements, you know that you didn't start that quite on time, so you started it a little bit later than you expected. So we're supposed to start February 3rd. Let's say it started procurements on February 8th. So you can see it started a little bit late, but let's say it's done. So we'll go to, we can type in 100% here like I was showing you. The other way we can do it is go to the task tab up here. I find this very useful. And you see that it's got percents. And you can use these. I find the 100% just quick. Click on it and that's done. So we've updated the schedule to this point. And it's been moving other activities, right? It's been moving other activities. Now the next one that we've got is permit approved, and we're going to say, you know what, that actually got approved. When everything moved the way it did, that got approved as well. So I just clicked 100% and that feeds that one in. Now maybe we rip out existing bathroom. Maybe for this one here, we started to rip it out and we got interrupted by a day. So maybe we started to rip this out, but we got interrupted by a day. So I'm going to go here where it says split task, right? Split task. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to bring this in here. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to move it by a day. Watch what happens. So I'm just dragging that carefully. I can see the date. I moved it from the Tuesday to the Wednesday and it split it. Oops, I didn't want that. I accidentally pulled that in. So then it split it. Okay, so it split the task. So that means maybe we were there the Monday, we missed the Tuesday. Something went on, we couldn't go in on the Tuesday. Right. So that's okay. And that activity is now done. So I could say it's 100% done. The rest of these activities, I'm going to say, you know what? They actually went the way that I planned, except for this one here, rough-in HVAC. They did not even start. All right, so rough-in HVAC, they did not even start. So I'm going to reschedule this work. If something that doesn't happen at all, you need to reschedule because it still needs to happen. You're updating the schedule to really reflect what's happened up to the status date. So nothing happened here. So I don't want to just leave it zeroed out. I want to reschedule it. So up here you see this move icon. I use this one fairly carefully. Sometimes I might put a start to start and change the relationship to move it. But because this is going to be moved right after the status date, I don't mind adjusting this. So I'm going to go move, and it's going to put a constraint because I could move it 1 day, 1 week. I could go custom and move it as many days as I want. Or I could also move it where it says incomplete parts to status date. So if I click here, watch what happens. It moves it to right after the status date. So it moves it right after the status date, so the Monday. If it's going to be far down, I usually am kind of cautious because I'm not too thrilled because it puts a constraint on it. But if I'm going to update everything to the status date anyways, it's not going to really impact my critical path. So something like that, I will consider just doing a move because it actually put a constraint on this. If I go to my entry view, I will see that little box. We've talked about that before. We try to avoid constraints wherever possible, but in this case, because I want to demonstrate that ability, you could do it. Just remember, beware, don't put a lot of constraints on your original schedules. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, go back and look at and review some of my earlier videos with regards to constraints, because they really lock you up and reduce your flexibility. All right, so I've got all of these things updated, but these ones haven't been. Now, I could go back to my tracking view and calculate, well, this one would be easy, it's done. And calculate, well, how many days? This is 2 days. I could say it's 50% done, and that's 50% done. I could do that. Or I could do it the easy way, because you might have big projects, and you've got a whole bunch. You've done all these oddball adjustments. It's moved everything. And now these ones that are left, and on a bigger project, you could have 30 or 40 activities. They're already moved, and you're happy with where they are, and that's the way it went. The quick way to then update is you click this Select All, the square icon box. Remember, it's handy. And you, in the Task tab, you click on Mark on Track. Mark on Track is very helpful as long as you set the status date. All right. See, it says set the select tasks so they are on schedule per the status date. So because you set the status date, Microsoft Project knows what date you want to update it to. If you just click on that, it updates all of the tasks to the left of the status date. It won't update anything to the right of the status date. So you don't worry about these all of a sudden getting updated. It will only update to the status date. And it will calculate for you what percent is done of those activities from working days, right? So that's why I looked at that. I saw it was 2 days, and I know one of those days is done. So that's done our update. And that's kind of the easy way that I find to update the schedule. There is this Mark on Track that you can pull down and you can do update tasks. So there's another way of updating tasks here, putting in actual start and actual finish dates in here. So you can do it that way. Nothing wrong with doing it that way. There's multiple ways of doing it. I just happen to like going to the tracking screen and entering the information that way. I put in the duration, so I like to do that. You can also, by the way, there is another column I sometimes use. I don't use it all the time, but insert column. If you type B for baseline, there's all these baseline columns, and I go baseline duration, then I can see what was my original plan duration. So I know this one took 2 days longer, right? The other ones kind of just moved for a variety of different reasons. So you can put that baseline duration column in just to check that out. I just deleted it because you can delete them from view, as I've said in the past. The screen I really want to go to now is the variance screen. I want to see how far behind schedule we are. So I'm going to go to the square icon box, top left, right click, and I'm going to go to my variance screen. So I can see right now all these changes and adjustments, they have thrown me off by 3 days. So my project is now 3 days behind schedule. And I can review it because it's showing me, remember we set the baseline, it's showing me, did we start this on time? Yeah. Did we start this on time? Yeah. Did we finish on time? No, it took 2 days longer than we expected. Okay, so we have a variance here, right? And this is the driver because it was on the critical path. So it's pushing everything. Procurements, 3 days, 3 days. Yeah, but it's not on the critical path, so it really didn't influence anything. My question is, why did this push the project? And really what I strongly suggest is when you update, you put notes. So you double click on the activity and that brings up the task information box. You can put in the notes column what caused the delay. Design correction required by building department. So by doing that, you're keeping a record of what was causing the delay, right? For every activity. And then you know. In this case here, this took 2 days and then it went to 3 days. There was that break. There wasn't an increase in the durations. Remember I showed the baseline duration column and it was the same when I looked at it compared to the duration. But there was this interruption here. If it was outside work, it might be that you had bad weather. If it's inside work, maybe the client didn't want to let you in that day. They had something going on, whatever it may be. So it's very helpful to be able to do that split and it won't increase the duration. If you had a variable cost assigned to that, like your carpenter assigned directly to this activity, it wouldn't increase that carpenter that's directly assigned to it because they're not there in that middle day. It would, however, increase a carpenter that you had on the overall project if they were still there. So you've got to know how it impacts the costs as well. So we put that in there. Now another thing that we can check now that we've updated it up to the status date, a very good screen to work with the variance screen, remember we're in the variance screen, is the tracking Gantt. And usually when I go to the tracking Gantt, I like to go to it first because it's going to put me back in the entry view. So if I slide to the left and I right click tracking Gantt, this is the tracking Gantt screen. And I'm back in the entry screen, so I'm going to go to the variance screen. There's my note that I put in there, remember? So notes, the design correction. That's the nice thing about the indicator column that I've been telling you in previous videos. It tells me if there's stuff going on. I'm going to click on the square icon. I'm going to go to my variance screen. So now in this screen, I can see the variance and the tracking Gantt. So the tracking Gantt is got 2 bars. The bottom bar represents the plan. The top bar represents either the actuals, like here, because it's darker blue, or things that are yet to happen. All right, so this is critical path items, things that are yet to happen. In the blue, that's got float, lighter blue though. So anything past the status date, and the status date is here. One of the unfortunate things is I have to put the status line again if I want to see it. I can tell where it is just by where it's updated to, but I usually like to put the status date line in this view as well. I right click, if you recall, go to grid lines, and then I can see my status date. I put a solid line, go to red, and now I've got my status date line. I can see what I'm looking at. So in our update file here, we have updated this project up to this date. Now this is by time. We know we're 3 days behind. I wonder how much over budget we are. Let's go to the cost screen. If you're cost loading your schedule, you'll also see if you're over on any of your variable costs. I didn't change any of my actual direct costs, like my contracted costs, but I do have a variance, and that's got to do with my project taking longer. So setting the baseline, if you've made it cost loaded, it will show you not only time, but actually cost. You don't have to do cost loading. You could just do it with time if that's the way you're managing your project. But if you wanted to also manage it by looking at your costs and budget that way, it can be very helpful, because then you get a really good sense of your costs per day, per diem cost that it adds up onto the project. If I wanted to know where I'm over, I'm willing to bet that we're mostly over on our PM, 10% to the project, and our site super lead carpenter, who's assigned 50% to the project, right? And who else do we have here? These are other ones. That one won't be affected, not variable that way, but this one will. So we've got these two. Let's check it out. Let's check it out. You've got all this data entered. It can be very helpful. You see what's going on. So I would go to my resource sheet. I would check out my resource sheet, and I see I've got these costs here, but that doesn't tell me anything. In the resource sheet, there's actually a cost sheet for the resources. I click here, right click, go cost. Okay. My project manager's $196 over. My site super is $240 over. Those two together is where my costs are. We've incurred actual costs up to date of this amount, and we have this amount remaining in our costs. So we can get a good sense of how we're doing budget-wise and how we're doing cost-wise, and then we can even look individually, where are the cost differences? So at the end of the project, we know we took longer, we underestimated our PM or our site super costs, and then we can make corrections when we do future costs, because this is all the feedback, continuous learning part. We don't know where our costs are going if we're not really tracking them. We don't know where the time is going if we're not really tracking it. But this way, we can track it really, really efficiently. So in future videos, I am going to be updating on Microsoft Project Made Easy, the recovery aspect. How do we get the time back? And step by step, how do we do that? File naming protocols so that you can carefully follow and track your projects over a longer period of time. And there's a process involved in that. Understanding better the cost implications of these updates. But in the nutshell, this is our update. We know that we're 3 days behind schedule. This is really what we just done here is looking back. It's historical. Updates are historical. What happened? Next, we look at, we're 3 days behind. Maybe the client still wants us to get finished on time. Maybe there's liquidated damages on this project where every day we're late, it costs so much money. We want to make sure that we have understood why we're delayed. Maybe we're delayed not for something we caused, but something the client caused. We don't want to have to pay those liquidated damages if we didn't cause it. That's why we want to put notes and understand why. So I hope you enjoyed this quick session on updating a project, and I'll see you in future videos. And please, if you enjoyed this and you want to see many, many more videos, if you're in the construction field, I have tons of videos on the different topics on my YouTube channel. And if you're not, and you're in Microsoft Project, I have a lot of Microsoft Project videos project managers would appreciate from that perspective. I also have a tools and techniques series that can be very helpful for project managers. So I'm Tom Stephenson, wishing you a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Bye for now.